What's up? It's your boy D Change coming at you with another Daily Dave. It's Saturday, April 18th, 2020. Today, I want to tell you about how I listen to podcasts at 2x speed. Now, you might notice that I am speaking very deliberately right now. And that is because if you speed this up at 2x speed, or two times as fast as you would normally hear this would still sound quite clear. And I know this because I regularly listen to podcasts at 2x speed. Okay, so I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. But the point here I'm trying to make, actually, I'm not even trying to make a point. So I listen to podcasts at 2x speed because there's so many podcasts that I want to listen to. I'm shaking the table now. If I were to show you my queue of podcasts, it's like over 100 episodes long and like 130 hours worth of content. So that's kind of insane. Um, so listening with stuff like silence trimming and like book ending episodes. Well, I wish like I can skip the first like maybe like 5 minutes of some podcasts because all of their ads will run during that time where they have a like the same intro every time or whatever. And then like marking an episode as played immediately after like they're done before they do the credit roll. That's how I roll. So and it just tends to be because I really like, like long form conversations. I like really long podcasts where two or more people can really get into like a deeper conversation or a wide ranging go into a lot of wide ranging topics because it just kind of shows a more human element to the person being interviewed. But at the same time, I really like super well produced shows like from Gimlet, from WNYC, uh, NPR, and all the like I'm trying to think of who, like Dubner Productions. I'm trying to remember who all the big players were that do like This American Life, Planet Money, Freakonomics, etc. Because their lineage has really spread out to a lot of the podcasting space. But anyway, um, yeah. So I do this just purely because there's so much stuff that I want to consume. Um, and very few times do I notice that like I guess a host or someone being interviewed is a little bit too difficult to understand, so I dial it back. My benchmark now for podcasts really is 2x speed, unless I'm actually like doing something else important. So this is it's a tricky matter because I've seen like articles that go like stop listening to your podcasts at this type of speed or whatever, or just listen to them at their normal speed. If I listen to a podcast now at normal speed, I actually like almost feel pain in how slow it goes. Like it's kind of funny how slow we actually do speak when it comes to making sure we enunciate properly. And that's what I was trying to do in the beginning. So in regards to like producing clear content, clear, intelligible, understandable content, communicating in that way is very effective. But the irony is that like I mean, I don't know if you've tried to speak faster in a more clear way, but it's difficult. And if anything, it helps to know that like programming in general kind of follows a certain trend. So like TV programming all should be at like a certain base volume. There's industry standards purely because when you're flipping through the channels, you don't want to be running into a show that's like too low in volume or too high in volume or really just like out of place. So similar with podcasts, like this is why I looked into like volume standards and how like industry professionals try to edit podcasts, because I wanted like my own podcast to match that standard. Because nothing is worse, in my opinion, when listening to podcasts than like going through your list and all of a sudden there's this one show where like the volume's way too low. And there are times where I literally just skip podcasts because I'm just like, I'm not gonna keep trying to understand this. Like, it's really sad. I mean, it's at a point where like I almost feel like I shouldn't have that many shows in queue anyway. Like, what do I really get out of listening to so many of these? Sometimes they're just interesting conversations, and sometimes like they only scratch the surface of what I actually want to listen to. And sometimes they're thinly veiled advertisements. So, I mean, we live in an age where there's so much out there now that like it's absolutely impossible to consume everything out there. Not even a fraction now, because I mean everyone's a content creator now. So it's like it's kind of imperative. It's kind of like our duties as people to like be proactive about seeking out what we want to actually consume, whether it be movies, books, blogs, podcasts, videos, etc. So anyway, where was I going with this? Anyway, like I listen to podcasts at 2x speed. Sometimes I go to 2.5 if it's a very clear speaker, a clear set of people, and it's not like too not too analytical or anything. I have to admit, I have to give credit to the ones where I can consistently listen to them passively and still kind of like understand what they're saying. I do have to admit, because of like pandemic issues, now that people are not really recording in person anymore, and they'll do it over Skype or whatever, audio quality has gone way down. And it's unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. I really respect the podcasters who take it super seriously, but they tend to be the ones who already make enough money doing other things anyway. But one particular method I've heard from Tim Ferriss is he'll literally ship a podcast kit to you if you're his guest. I don't know if he doesn't do that. I don't know if he does that anymore, or if it's just not everyone is willing to take on that burden. But it's like, you might as well ship a microphone and like instructions or whatever to them, or like you could ship over a recorder, and then they'll ship it back, and then you can like piece it together. But these are also people who can afford to like hire whole teams to produce their shows for them. And it's not like a podcast needs like a lot of editing or anything like that. You could literally start one with your phone. It's very true. What my friends and I did was we took a look at what was like very recommended equipment from a lot of like amateurs, prosumers. Because if you go into like if you try to go the professional route immediately, you're just gonna end up spending a bunch of money. And then if you don't like what you're doing, it's like, why did you buy professional grade equipment for a hobby, right? So we looked into like entry level stuff, and we really did like go budget with it. So there aren't large qualms with like, ooh, you wasted this money on equipment, right? If anything, it was a good learning experience, because at least we understand how different components work, and it's a different setup from what I'm used to. I was used to podcasting through Skype or Google Hangouts, and we would do it completely digitally. So like we had this microphone, or everyone had their own microphone and their own computer setup and all that. But then in an in-person podcast, which is what I really wanted to try, you had to hook up other things. Like we have a mixer. Everything is XLR based. We had our microphones and our stands for each person, and then we had to hook that all up into into like what do you call that thing? It's not I guess it's an amp. I don't know. It's so that we can listen to our voices while also hearing everyone else. So we have an extra feedback loop for our earbuds or our headphones, and then we hook that all up into a laptop, and then we record everything through that, and we have to make sure the software works with the hardware. So it might be extra work, but like it was really cool to go through that process. And I think it really, in my opinion, it really helped a lot because we didn't have to worry about timings when editing. We didn't have to worry as much about kind of post processing and stuff like that because a lot of it was handled on the recording end. You know, as long as you have a good base recording, post processing doesn't have to be as crazy anymore. So that was like an interesting thing about going through that learning process. So yeah, anyway, I guess this is just a general podcast talk now. But yeah, I'll even watch YouTube videos on like 1.5, 1.25 if it's like something I want to make sure I understand, 1.5 if it's like someone I'm familiar with, like especially if I get familiar with your voice and your speaking style, it's a lot easier to track how you speak. But if you have a guest that's like really different from what I'm used to, yeah, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, I better slow it down. But yeah, I'll even watch YouTube videos at 2x speed if it's not like music based or whatever, purely because I mean I like watching educational videos, so that's the caveat here. The type of entertainment I like to consume really is like educational, informative, historical, kind of like lecture style or interview style, and if not, then like casual conversation, but for the purpose of like learning and um, not necessarily analysis. Like I think if it gets too like analytical and scientific, that's when I really have to like either slow it down or I'm just gonna have to accept I'm not gonna understand 99% of the show. And at that point, it's like you might as well just skip it, right? If anything, the more scientific ones I've been listening to have predominantly been doctors talking about currently coronavirus. Before that, though, just health in general. So at least it was something I had an interest in. I don't tend to add shows about like I'm trying to think of what's. I mean, that's the thing. Like, what am I not interested in, right? Like, I don't really know. So, so yeah, like I guess I won't listen to, I don't know, shows specifically about music. Like I don't care to, I guess I don't care to listen to someone's opinion about something I don't listen to, right? Like a genre of music I don't listen to. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's just the funny thing. And I remember reading an acquaintance's account of how like he listens to podcasts at like 3x speed to like save time. And you really do save time. I mean, a lot of times I'm listening while doing the dishes, while I'm out for a walk, well, back when I was driving the commute, you know. And now, like, if I am driving to pick something up, like, yeah, it's good to fill up. It's either like I want music on for the mood, or yeah, let's just listen to a podcast. Or sometimes like I'll want to like polish my shoes or clean up around the house, and I'll just keep my earbuds in and just listen, just to kind of like get through it all. But one reason why I have so many shows queued up right now is because there's been a lot of like coronavirus related stuff. So if anything, that has like taken over my content feed. And I am, I'm taking it back in the sense that I don't need as much about that anymore. But because it's a developing situation and there are some very like smart people working on it, I like to keep up with that part of it now. Like I think we're already, most of us are already done with like understanding what this is. Like we've chosen our sides, so to speak. We've chosen what stance we're gonna take in this entire like episode. Um, so there's not a lot new about that. And then or at least like maybe because I feel like I was a little bit ahead of the curve in the sense of like consuming the information. So I don't really need a primer on like how it works anymore, how the virus works, how it spreads, what we need to do. Like that's, my family and I are set on like what we're gonna do to protect ourselves. But in terms of like the research that's going into it and what doctors are saying and like new developments, like that's cool to listen to, and there's also like alternative, what would you call it, like takes on, hey, like what about genetics affects infection rates? Like what can we learn from that? How can we gather more data, and how can we look at different things to kind of construct a different interpretation of how we can move forward, right? How can we move out of lockdown? How can we like reopen the economy, etc. And so everyone has a different kind of like idea of how it's going to work. So that's the next step, right? So anyway, yeah, I guess I just wanted to put that out there because I now have like a running list of topics that I may or may not want to talk about, and one of them was literally just I listened to a podcast at 2x speed, and I feel it's funny because I feel like every time I mention it, someone will say like, what, like, why do you even do that? But yeah, I've gotten really used to it. Even back when I was living in Tokyo, I that was when I got into podcast. Honestly, I'm not sure why. um, I think I started listening to them shortly before I moved to Tokyo, but while I was there, I think it's because all. Oh no, it was all because of all the walking. Like so, because of like the fact that every single day I would probably walk at least. I mean, if it was only half an hour each day, I'd be surprised. But like, I felt like I walked like an hour every single day, you know. And so to kind of fill up that time, I mean, I could have spent that time kind of like attempting to interact with people. But I'm introverted anyway. Like I'm not really big on kind of small talk, and I'd rather do that in an environment where it's like very conducive to that, right? So, um, so if I'm just walking for the purpose of like getting somewhere, yeah, like just I would rather put on a podcast and just like quote unquote learn. And like what's real is like most people are only gonna get maybe remember 1 to 5% of a podcast, right? It's like the one main point. Like I've probably listened to I don't know 3 or 4 shows already in the past day, 24 hours or something. I could only tell you so many snippets. It's the same with like reading a book, right? Like a book represents someone's like year or two worth of research and time and all that to produce something. But realistically, like how much of that book are you gonna memorize unless you keep rereading it? And the truth of the matter is I don't re-listen to podcasts. Like I've I've probably only listened to a handful of podcasts twice, and purely because the author made it a rerun. And I just thought, yeah, I'll listen to it again because it was good. And that's it. Like I favorite a lot of episodes because I would recommend them, or I would want to, if I had the time, I would go back to them, or if I wanted to refer to them again for some specific reason, I would do that. But otherwise, yeah, there's just so much stuff out there that it's impossible to kind of get everything, So in a way, that's what I have to be much more like judicious about. I have to be more picky about what I do consume, because surprise, surprise, if you go to my YouTube watch later list, it's almost 1,300 videos long. So more of the story is I add too much shit to watch, read, look at later, and then in the end I never get to it. So what's the point? Question mark. I don't know. That actually reminds me of a theory of like book reading. Like most people will, or like the average story, so to speak, that you'll hear is that, oh, I'll get to that book later. I'm gonna add it to my list. Whereas the more effective way to read books or whatever is, what's the information I need right now? Let me go get it. What's ironic though is I think that's actually that's the same as like just-in-time manufacturing, like which is what our global economy is run on, and because of a massive disaster, it is now heavily impacted, purely because we don't have a lot of stuff stored away for emergencies, right? But similarly, I mean, like, big whoop if you can't like get a book, right? I mean, these days with because of stuff like digital publishing, I mean that's the thing, the landscape keeps changing. Because of digital publishing, like books technically don't run out. As long as there's a license to something like Kindle or whatever, you can always buy it. But I understand the problem with that as well. And that was the same argument that, we gamers had 10 years ago about Steam. Because like if your game is digital only and you don't get to own it, when when the series of companies that helped create and publish it go out of business, what happens? Because you don't have support for the game anymore. Are the servers still going to be up? You know, all that BS about online only play. The good thing about Steam and Valve, the company, is that they've been very good and true to their word about, you know, legacy games, as far as I know. But it doesn't mean like, you know, anything's for sure, right? But to be honest, like try to run a computer game from like 20 years ago. Some of them literally don't run because of like the way they were programmed. So I don't know. Sometimes as humans we just gotta accept how transient we are. No, how temporary we are. Sucks, dude. I'm sorry. It's just because every other night I'm just like, man, I'm gonna die someday, and it sucks. So plenty of time to think over our mortality during shelter in place. So anyway, if you're watching this on Facebook, you can't speed it up, but if you're watching it on YouTube, you definitely can. Okay, so I would I would definitely recommend that if you're really into saving time but still getting your favorite content from your favorite content creators. Yeah, I would say give it a shot. I would if I would say if you've never done anything, listen to anything at like a extra speed, try 1.25 or around there. So for YouTube I do 1.25, and then for like podcasts, like on my on my podcast app, it's called Pocket Casts, I do 1.3x. And then I forgot when this was, but I would gradually up it from like 1.3 to 1.5, and then to 1.7 or 1.8, and then 2. And at one point I was listening to this stuff at 3, but I realized for most shows I felt like I wasn't really getting anything out of it. So I did dial it back down, purely because I still want to be able to absorb it. But if you take the time to ease into faster speed, you actually can understand it to a certain degree. But how much of it how much do you actually get out of it? That's really more. There's like more diminishing returns, or there's more. It might be more work than it's actually worth. So I don't know. For me, I've found my sweet spot to be 2 times, and like I said, if it's a lot of heavy material that I can blast through, I'll up it to 2.5, purely just to get it out of there, get it out of the way or whatever. So, or if it's people who just speak really slow all the time, it makes it difficult to get through. So, but yeah, that's just my thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening to this recording at whatever speed you wanted it to be. If you like listening to stuff slower, that's cool too. I know sometimes I speak fast, but I've really varied up my speaking speed this entire video. So I'm sorry, it's just gonna be bad. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace out.